Hey, Pretty Girl Club. Welcome back to the Psychology of a Femcel series. And I'm really glad you guys reminded me of recording this video. But I want to talk about if you were raised by a femcel mother. So, just a warning, this episode is going to be very triggering. A lot of times when I talk about like mother and father wounds, I may end up exposing some of you guys' parents. But number one, sign that you were raised by a femcel mother is that you never learned basic beauty routines and beauty hacks because your mother and her family do not come from generations of pretty privilege. So a lot of this black femininity content, all they're doing is exposing the fact that a lot of their mothers really were femcels because they didn't even teach them how to wash their private parts, how to make sure their teeth don't get cavities, like how to brush their hair, how to care for their own hair. So a lot of women who are in their 30s and 40s and they're still just now learning how to take care of their feminine hygiene and stuff, a lot of those women were actually raised by mothers who did not prioritize femininity. And in some cases, they didn't even prioritize basic hygiene. Number two, you were not taught about the realities of beauty politics in society. So women who are femcels, remember that a femcel is really just a pick-me who never got picked. So it's a woman that is lacking in pretty privilege, or maybe she was lacking in beauty and femininity. She never had that pretty privilege. She never had that feminine privilege. Or if she did, she lost it. And so she didn't teach you, her daughter, about the realities of how much society cares about looks and appearance. So maybe when you were a little girl, she let you walk around with like the same clothes on 5 days in a row. Or, have you ever seen those kids where the daughter looks horrible, but then the mother, maybe she has her acrylic nails done. She's got her hoop earrings on, but then the child actually looks like they haven't had their diaper changed in a long time. So that's a sign that you were raised by a femcel mother because remember, they are just pick-me's who never got picked. And part of the reason why femcel mothers don't teach you about the reality of beauty politics is because she has never had pretty privilege, or she didn't know how to play the game herself. She didn't know how to play the game of life. She didn't know how to use her beauty to succeed. She didn't know how to use her beauty to help her. And so there's nothing for her to teach you. And I know it may be really hurtful to hear, but it's like I'm not taking advice from someone I wouldn't trade lives with. So I want you to ask yourself, would you trade pretty privileges with your mother? Or like, did your mother ever have any stories about her pretty privilege, or did she have anything to tell you? Because I'm also going to do another episode about being raised by pretty privileged women and kind of the difference with that as well, because that's where I come from. I came from a family line of pretty privileged women, and I will talk about the dynamics of that as well. Both have pros and cons, but signs you were raised by a femcel is that your mother deprioritized beauty, or they tried to pretend, they lied to you and said, looks don't matter. Okay, that's actually a lie. Looks do matter. When you go into a job interview, they care about what you look like. You can't go in a job interview with flip-flops on and expect to be taken seriously. So femcel mothers, they didn't teach you about utilizing your looks to have a good perception because they didn't do that. Okay, number three, your mom would gaslight you when you told her that people were jealous of your beauty. And you know why she didn't believe you? Well, it's because she's never had women be jealous of her beauty. So of course she's not going to believe you because navigating the world as a pretty privileged woman is something that she did not have. And so she feels like because you are related to her, because you came out of her womb, there's no way you could have pretty privilege and she doesn't. And so that's why she doesn't believe you, because she feels like, wait a minute, how is it that you have all this pretty privilege and you have all these people being jealous of you, but I didn't have that? There's no way people could think you're beautiful because you look like me. So this is your mother projecting her own inferiority complex onto you. I've seen a lot of black mothers do this with their biracial daughters. So a lot of mothers, they will have a child with like a white man, and then that little girl, she will have the mother's black facial features and maybe the father's skin tone and hair texture or something. And then she'll complain about people being jealous, and then the black mother won't believe her because she's thinking to herself, wait a minute, you're my daughter. You look just like me. You're not beautiful. So she's basically projecting her own insecurities onto you. She thinks that she's ugly. She thinks that her features are ugly. And so therefore, unfortunately, she thinks your features are ugly as well. Or she thinks that your facial features that you got from her or from your daddy, she thinks those features are not good enough for you to experience people being jealous of your beauty. That's why she doesn't believe you. When you say, hey, mom, I think these girls are jealous of me, or they threaten to beat me up, or, she's going to accuse you of exaggerating. Number 4, your mom has never had a healthy relationship with your dad or any man whatsoever. Okay, that's what a femcel is. A femcel is a pick-me who never got picked. So women, they could become femcels for many different reasons. Sometimes their personalities turn them into femcels because, like I said, these are pick-me's who never got picked. So sometimes they have a bad personality. Sometimes they look bad, or they have bad hygiene. Sometimes they lack social skills, or maybe they are so caught up in being a social justice warrior to the point where it's off-putting. Other times, these are women who are just in survival mode. They literally just have to figure out how to pay the bills, how to pay rent, how to pay their car note. And so they turn into a femcel because they're so desperate to survive. They literally have scarcity. They actually have they're living a life of scarcity. They don't have any food in the refrigerator. They didn't have the money to get out of the hood. So the last thing they're thinking about is a relationship. Okay, so that's another sign that your mom was a femcel. It's because she's never had any healthy relationships with a man whatsoever. So this is why a lot of people will ask you, like, hey, do you have a relationship with your father? Or like, what is your family background? I know that it's very biased for people to ask you that, but they're asking you that because there is a certain psychology that comes from being raised by a femcel mother versus being raised by a mother who, maybe she had healthy relationships with men, or she knew how to benefit off of the men in her life in a positive way. And by the way, when I talk about femcel psychology, I'm not just talking about her having an unhealthy relationship with your dad. I'm also talking about what is her relationship dynamic with her own brothers? What is her relationship dynamic with her father? So if she has never had any positive interactions whatsoever with any man, whether it's a boss at a job, it could be her brothers, that's a sign that she actually has a femcel mindset, because there is something that is preventing her from being able to socially interact with men in a normal way. Number 5, your mom has a toxic dynamic with men in general. So there's the femcel that has no relationship with men, like they are isolated from men, maybe due to social anxiety and stuff like that. And then there are the women who have a toxic dynamic with men. So these are the women who get in fist fights with men. They're throwing drinks, they're slashing tires, they're driving up on him in the middle of the night. They keep picking bad men. They keep picking these toxic men who come in and SA you as a little girl. These are the pick-me mothers. The femcel mothers, remember, they are pick-me's who never got picked. So maybe they had all of these temporary boyfriends throughout your childhood, and then your mother's boyfriends would come in your room and SA you. Like, I had friends like that where, they would always get SA'd by their mom's boyfriend, and then their mom would just like sweep it under the rug, and then she'd get a new boyfriend, then that boyfriend would also SA her. Okay, that's a sign that she has spent her life as a femcel, because she's so emotionally codependent and so desperate for male validation to the point where she is risking your safety on a continuous basis. And that includes after you've told her, hey, mom, your boyfriend SA'd me. She doesn't believe you. She puts men's opinions above women's. The femcel women are the ride or die chicks because she has no other option. Being single is not an option for her because she equates that to being a loser. Plus, she doesn't have the pretty privilege to still be treated well as a single woman. So here's the difference between a pretty privileged single woman versus a femcel single woman. The femcel single woman is going to feel unseen. She's going to feel unheard and unvalidated. But a pretty privileged single woman, she can go into the bar and get free drinks. She's going to get men talking to her on the street. She's going to go for a walk in the park, and guys are going to walk up to her in the park. So if you are a pretty privileged single woman, you are not lacking in male attention or male validation. It's abundant to you. But a femcel has the exact opposite experience. That's why they're more likely to be codependent and desperate to hold on to their relationships. So these are the women to where no matter what that man does, she won't leave that guy. Or if she does leave that guy, maybe she'll monkey branch into multiple different relationships. Okay, number 6, your mom was raised by a femcel. So your grandmother is a femcel. Maybe your mom has a bad relationship with your grandma. So do you come from generation after generation of femcels? Because usually this femcel behavior that your mom has, it wasn't created in a vacuum. She may have had a mother where her mother was way worse to her than what she's being to you. In fact, a lot of mothers will use this excuse. So when you try to tell your mom, hey mom, you're abusing me emotionally, or like, I don't like it when you call me ugly, mom, then your mom will say, well, my mom used to cuss me out every day and she used to slap me in the face. So she will use her former abuse as the standard of abuse, and then she'll try to make this excuse that like what I'm doing to you is not that bad because I'm not abusing you as bad as my mom abused me. So you're coming from generation after generation of femcells, and your mother's got like this abusive background to where, maybe grandma, maybe her mom was jealous of her or something, or maybe her mom was like even more of a femcel because of various reasons. It could have been the time period that grandma was raised in. It could have been the city that they were raised in. Maybe they grew up in the Jim Crow South. I mean, who knows? There are plenty of reasons why women become femcells. Number 6, sign that you have been raised by a femcel mother is that your mother is constantly talking shit about women's beauty. Okay, she's constantly downplaying women's beauty, but then you will end up catching your mother slipping because sometimes her mask will come off and she will admit that she's jealous. So one of you guys on my channel commented a while back about how one of your family members, she used to always down talk a certain celebrity, and then like a couple years later she admitted that she was deeply jealous of that celebrity. Okay, that's femcel behavior. So for a lot of femcells, their arch nemesis is a beautiful woman because remember, femcells are male identified. They are pick-me's who never got picked, and so they equate beauty to being picked by men. And so they don't really understand the benefits of beauty outside of a man. That's another sign that your mother's a femcel. She thinks that the only reason to be beautiful is so you can catch a man. In fact, you see a lot of this rhetoric in the Black empowerment space to this day. They think that the only reason we talk about beauty is because we're trying to get a man or we're trying to get a Black man or something. So femcells, they don't understand the nuances of beauty because they don't have it. And they've never been raised with it, or they never sought out having beauty, because believe it or not, beauty is actually a skill. Developing your beauty is a skill, or maintaining your beauty, both of those things are skills. So for some women, it's easier than others, but there's actually no such thing as completely effortless beauty. There's no such thing, because every woman, even the woman you think is so pretty, she still had to wash her face, she still has to take a shower, she still has to wash her hair like everyone else. So femcells, they have a mindset that beauty is a monolith, and they think that the only benefit of beauty is the male gaze, and they're also very male identified. Okay, so number 7, sign that your mother was a femcel, is that she is jealous of her pretty sisters and cousins. So do you have a mother that just hates other women, or for some reason you feel like she hates other women? You're like, why does my mom hate her sister? Why does she hate so-and-so, the pretty auntie? Why does she hate every other woman in our family? Well, part of this is because maybe you have some family members who had pretty privilege. Like maybe you as a kid, maybe you always thought that Aunt Kiki was very pretty. Well, guess what? Your mom knows that Aunt Kiki is pretty as well. Maybe your mom was the ugly sister, and then your aunties were all pretty or something like that. So that's another sign that she's a femcel, because she's comparing herself to her siblings, or she's comparing herself to the other female cousins. Maybe she compares herself to female neighbors or coworkers, and she feels like she doesn't measure up. One of the pivotal parts of a femcel mentality is inferiority complex. She feels inferior because her beauty did not lead her to getting the male gaze. She felt left behind in terms of beauty. Okay, number 8, sign that you were raised by a femcel mother. She takes away your beauty items as a punishment. That is a sign that deep down inside she knows that being ugly is a punishment. Why would she go out of her way to take your makeup? Why is she going out of her way to take your hair, your curling iron and your hair conditioner and your hair grease and all that? Why is that the punishment? Well, it's because she knows that being quote unquote ugly is the punishment. She wants you to look unkept because she wants you to feel humbled. A lot of times when parents punish their children, first of all, don't even get me started on that. I actually haven't even begun to talk about the psychology of child development, because I really do think my channel probably would get banned at that point. But for a lot of parents, taking away your beauty items or your hygiene items and stuff, that's actually a form of abuse. Or not providing those items at all. Like if you're on your period, you don't have pads, you don't have tampons, or they just let you walk around with blood. Like I've heard of some mothers who will let their daughters walk around with blood on their jeans and stuff because they don't care that their daughter gets humiliated and made fun of at school. They want to see their daughters getting ostracized. They want to see their daughters suffering. That's a very like demented, very messed up mindset to have. So some mothers, they actually will take away your beauty or hygiene items as a punishment and also as an extreme humbling tactic because they're trying to exercise their power over you. Or maybe they feel like, you're feeling yourself a little bit too much with this new hairstyle you got. You think you're cute now because you got this little push-up bra. So some parents, they may take away your bras, they take away your underwear, they take away anything that has to do with femininity, anything that has to do with beauty, anything that has to do with hygiene, like feminine hygiene. Maybe they take all your body sprays or something. You'd be surprised at some of the things that some of these mothers could do. That is extreme femcel energy. They don't want you to have access to multiple sources of micro-validation. You looking cute with your makeup on, that's a source of micro-validation. You having your little lip gloss on, that's a source of micro-validation. And I'm not talking about the women who grew up religious, because I understand that like some little girls aren't allowed to wear makeup just in general. So that's not what I'm talking about though, because I wasn't allowed to wear makeup either. But I'm talking about where maybe you were allowed to wear makeup, but then as a punishment, all of your feminine stuff gets taken away from you. So now you can't do the cheerleading squad. You don't get to be on the dance team. You don't get to wear the cheerleading skirt and have the pom-poms. You don't get to do the pageant. It gets ripped away from you because your mother, she never was taught to value femininity. She wasn't taught to value beauty. And so if you value that, she doesn't understand that, that's a part of you developing your identity as a little girl. That's a part of you developing your femininity is when you're a teenager, learning how to manage your hair. That's a part of your independence and individuality as a young girl. But for femcels, a lot of them do struggle with emotional codependency. And so as a way to take back control, she will take away all of your beauty items. And a part of that is because she does not want you to enjoy putting on that nail polish. She doesn't want you to have any sort of enjoyment in your femininity because she didn't get that. So a lot of femcel mothers, they don't realize what they're doing. A lot of them, they were just raised to where this was normal. Maybe they got their nail polish taken away. Maybe they got their makeup and stuff taken away. And so she's literally just carrying on this generational curse without realizing it. So that's a part of why you see a lot of women being accused of being masculine and stuff. Well, it's because they didn't grow up being able to learn about putting on nail polish or kind of these basic girly things like wearing barrettes and wearing a bow in their hair. They got all of that taken away. Or they were not allowed to rely on that. They didn't feel like it was their birthright to be feminine, if that makes sense. Femininity was demonized. That's another aspect of the femcel psychology. She's very threatened by femininity in general. And sometimes mothers actually get jealous of their own daughters because they feel like you are spoiled. Like, how dare you be more spoiled than I was? Or like they get threatened by the confidence that you already have. They feel like you have this fearlessness that they never had when they were your age. So that's very threatening. I mean, I can see why mothers would be threatened by that. Imagine being 40 years old, 50 years old, you're overweight, you're living in the ghetto, you're struggling, and then you birth this daughter. And she's beautiful, she's got pretty privilege, she's owning her femininity, she's smart. Basically, she's everything you're not. And I know that it's messed up, but some mothers, they genuinely do not feel that same love and emotional connection with their daughters because they're not able to trauma bond with you. I've talked about this before. Sometimes women literally get mad when you can't trauma bond with them. And I believe that this happens with mothers and daughters. If that mother that you have, if she couldn't trauma bond with you, she gets mad. This is why you see that dynamic sometimes between Black mothers and biracial daughters. So sometimes the Black mother gets pissed that she can't trauma bond with you over colorism, texturism, and featureism because you've never experienced those things. And so then she gets all pissed off like, oh, I don't want people to compliment her. Oh, I'm not going to compliment her. So it's kind of like this humbling tactic. Like, let me not validate her because I didn't get validated because I was dark skinned. So they've got all of these micro insecurities. And so they actually get pissed off when their own daughters are not raised with the same insecurities. Okay, I think I'm on number 8. She accuses you of being a hoe. And the reason that she's doing this is because if she looked like you, if she had your body, if she had your face, if she had your access to pretty privilege, then she would be a hoe. So that's why she's accusing you of being a hoe. She's accusing you of being promiscuous, even though you're not. And she's doing that because she doesn't understand that beauty does not revolve around the male gaze. So femcels, they have this idea that like any woman who's beautiful or sexy, she is only being that way for men's pleasure. And so when she sees qualities in her teenage daughter that are considered beautiful or sexy, her mind, her internalized misogyny instantly starts shaming you because she feels like you must be a hoe because that's why you're wearing a miniskirt. It has nothing to do with you just liking fashion or miniskirts. You're automatically wearing it so you can be a Jezebel. And that's another thing. They'll weaponize the Jezebel archetype against you. Have you ever noticed a lot of Black women actually talk about being perceived as Jezebels? Well, a lot of them probably had Femcel mothers. They probably had Femcel Baptist mothers who told them that they were being a Jezebel because, she's a little cute, skinny girl with like nice legs or something. So then their mother, who was a Femcel, she projected that misogyny onto her daughter. And she started calling them a hoe. And the reason that mothers will do this is because they want you to stop doing what you're doing. Stop wearing those shorts. Why? Oh, because your legs look too good. Or sometimes they'll try to police your clothing, like, oh, don't wear shorts when your uncles come around. Don't wear shorts if there are going to be men around. You can't wear a skirt. You can't wear form-fitting clothes. So basically you have to dress like a nun whenever there are going to be male friends and family members coming around, because femcels, like I said, they're very male identified. So these are the women who will protect men. They protect predators. They will shame and vilify the woman as opposed to vilifying the actual person who essayed the woman. Kind of like with the new trophy wife, you know how a lot of people, they're only vilifying her, or they're saying that she's lying and that the guy, like, he would never do that or whatever. And I'm not saying that she doesn't have her flaws, but I have noticed that a lot in the Black community where it's like they will protect the actual predators and then they'll blame the woman, like, oh, that's why you got R-worded. It's because you were wearing a bikini. So you were being a Jezebel and you tempted him. You're causing your brothers to stumble by wearing this outfit. Oh, you got SA'd because you basically deserved it for wearing that miniskirt. Or they will even call you jailbait. So jailbait, you're basically saying that that girl that her body and her femininity is bait for predators. That's an extremely misogynistic talking point. But number 9 is she will sabotage your relationships and she seeks to embarrass you in front of others. So these are the mothers who, if you have a little boyfriend or some guy asked you to prom or something, you're not allowed to go. You can't go to the prom. You're not allowed to have a boyfriend. Or if you do have a boyfriend, she will embarrass you. If you're wearing a weave or something, like she'll call it out in front of your boyfriend. Or like she might randomly say stuff about you, like, oh, you're musty, or like your breath stinks. She's trying to say stuff to embarrass you in front of men because she feels embarrassed in front of the male gaze. She is used to being rejected by men. So she wants you to experience that same rejection. It's a form of humbling. It's an extreme humbling tactic. But number 10, signs you were raised by a femcel mother, is that she's never proud of you. You're never pretty enough to her. You're never good enough to her. Everybody else could be saying how pretty you are. In fact, I've actually heard some mothers on here, I've heard some of the divestors talk about this. They will marry a white guy and then they'll have these mixed race daughters, and then they will tell their friends and family not to compliment their daughters. Okay, so that's a sign that she's got some femcel energy because she's never proud of you. You are not her beautiful little daughter. You're not her pretty little princess. Nope, you're never good enough. In fact, she doesn't want others to see the special qualities in you. And this comes from her not feeling like others have seen the special qualities in her. Have you ever noticed that a lot of people, they want you to succeed, they just don't want you to be better than them? So she wants you to be pretty, just not prettier than her. She wants you to be rich, just not richer than her. She wants you to be smart, but not smarter than her. So a lot of mothers, they actually compete with their own daughters, and it's very messed up, it's very sick and demented to be competing with a 5-year-old daughter. I've actually heard of some mothers online, they will say stuff like, oh, my baby rejected me. My daughter rejected me from the time she was a child. I never felt connected with her. How does a baby reject you? Like, no, you're just looking for an excuse because you don't like her because you think that that baby looks prettier than you. You think that the baby is prettier than you at birth. And so you're jealous because she doesn't have to go through the same traumas that you went through. But this is all stuff that you should have been thinking about before you got impregnated. Before you have kids, you should probably think about, what do I want my kids to look like? Because a part of being a parent is that you are responsible to help build that child up, to encourage that child, and to help that child to have positive mental health. So for a lot of women, they cannot fathom helping this pretty gorgeous little child to have positive mental health. That makes them sick on the inside because they didn't even do that for themselves. So why would they do that for you? A lot of women who have babies out of self-hatred or emotional codependency, they don't even love themselves. So how can they love you? Like, come on, let's just be honest here. She doesn't even like how she looks. So why would she like how you look? She doesn't even like how your dad looks. So why would she like how you look? So, that's just another part of the femcel psychology. There's a desperation there. They were just desperate to maybe keep that man, or they were desperate to keep that lifestyle with a man, or they were desperate to uphold an image. So that's the only reason they birthed you. They didn't have you because they wanted to love on you and build you up. I mean, this is a part of why I'm child-free as well. I actually feel like the majority of people who have children and treat their children like this, a lot of these people, they should have never even had children. They didn't actually want the child. They just wanted the benefits that came with having the child, or they wanted to use the child as a manipulation tool. So for a lot of you guys, that's what you were, unfortunately. But that's okay, because it's going to make it easy for you to cut her off, because that would be my recommendation. Definitely cut her ass off if she is abusing you, or if she has a history of abuse and she never apologizes, or if she's like mean to you and she gaslights you. But we're going to get into that in a minute. Oh, but another thing I want to talk about is, in case you haven't noticed, femcel behavior overlaps with narcissism. And my theory on this is because narcissists are created by neglect. Okay, I have nothing to back that up. That's just my opinion, because I've never met a narcissist who has not been neglected. So narcissists are created by neglect. Neglect means you're invisible. That's another phrase. Being invisible, that's kind of a euphemism for saying I've been neglected. So she's been neglected by her surroundings. She has been invisible in society. And so she had to become a narcissist as a survival mechanism. That's another one of my psychological theories, is that people become narcissists because they've spent their lives not feeling seen or not feeling heard and not feeling validated. Those are basic human emotional needs. So they didn't get their emotional needs met. And so becoming a narcissist helps them to meet their own emotional needs. So being a narcissist obviously means you're going to have a tendency to want to control others. They want to punish others. They've got all sorts of psychological problems. But for a lot of women who feel invisible, beware of women who say things like, I feel invisible, I feel replaced. Okay, they're admitting that they feel neglected, and neglect is a breeding ground for narcissism. So this is why you see certain people from certain groups struggling a lot with narcissism. Well, it's because they've been extremely neglected in their lives. And some of them will actually try to use this as an excuse. Like, oh, I was neglected by my parent. I was neglected by my dad. And it's like, okay, that's still not an excuse for you to abuse your children. Okay, so that's the thing that pisses me off, is like when people, when they want to abuse their own children because they've been abused. No. But like I said, that actually is narcissist behavior. They're never going to go to therapy. They're going to abuse you. Abusing you is their therapy. Having a little pretty child that they get to control and dominate, that is their version of therapy. And I know it's very sick and demented and twisted, but it's very similar to like sociopath types of behaviors where people see a pretty flower and they just want to destroy it. They just want to rip all the petals off of it, or they see a pretty Barbie doll and they want to rip the head off the Barbie doll. So for a lot of femcel mothers, they unfortunately view their children this way. So this is why I will never shame women for going no contact with their mothers or going no contact with their fathers. Whoever is making them have this narcissistic abuse. A lot of women who have extreme PTSD, they have it because they have suffered from narcissistic abuse at the hands of their own mothers. But number 10 on my list, I think I'm on number 10, is that she does not want you to have the social power that comes with beauty. So for example, she will come in and ruin your popularity at school. Let's say you're in high school or something, you're popular. She will tell others not to compliment you because, it's going to blow your head up and you're so conceited. So at the cookout, maybe she tells other family members, don't compliment her, don't tell her she's cute. Don't compliment her outfit. Don't compliment her for doing a good job at the basketball game. She wants to ruin anything that makes you stand out. So, for example, let's say you grew up playing sports. She's not going to congratulate you on winning the championship. She's always going to call out your flaw, like, oh, your form was bad, or like, oh, you didn't do a good job at that tennis match, or oh, your other friend did a better job than you. Or she will stop your coaches or your teachers from complimenting you. She tries to ruin your social power. She wants to ruin your popularity. And she does not want you to have the social power that comes with beauty. And so that's why, maybe you've always been very pretty and maybe you wanted to be a model. You wanted to do pageants or you wanted to express yourself with fashion or something. Nope, you can't do any of that because that is a form of social power that is connected to beauty. So no, you're not allowed to do that. And by the way, I'm not trying to police anyone's parenting here, but I'm just saying that if somebody is your parent, if they have a legit reason for doing something, usually the parent will explain to you why they're doing that punishment, or they'll explain why you can't do those things. So, for example, I wasn't allowed to wear makeup when I was a kid, but my parents told me that I wasn't allowed to wear makeup because they wanted me to learn how to like love my own face. They wanted me to have like a form of self-love. Also, I was still developing, like I was still really young. They wanted to make sure that I knew how to take care of my skin. So my parents actually explained what they were doing and why. But I've noticed that sometimes bad parents, they never explain to the child what's going on. She's just a child, so she doesn't know why you're slapping her in the face or why you're taking away all her nail polishes. So a lot of these femcel types of parents, they'll just start taking shit. They'll just start destroying your stuff. Maybe they'll break your makeup. Maybe they'll throw your stuff in the trash. Maybe you spent your little money from your little McDonald's job. You spent it all on your makeup and all your lipsticks and stuff. Then your mom gets mad one day and in a fit of narcissistic rage, she just takes everything you have, she just dumps it in the trash. So it's very similar to the men who have these girlfriends and then they break their girlfriend's makeup and stuff. You guys have seen those videos where it's like the boyfriend, he will throw away that woman's makeup because he doesn't want her to have access to pretty privilege. That's incel behavior. This is all incel and femcel behavior. They know that beauty comes with social power, so they don't want you to have any access to it. Or they don't want you to know you're beautiful. Have you ever noticed those types of people? That's always an incel or a femcel saying that. Oh, I want someone who looks good but doesn't know it. So basically you're saying you want someone who looks good but they don't have self-awareness or self-esteem. Like you're basically saying, I want someone who looks good that I get to emotionally manipulate. I want someone who looks good who doesn't know their worth. That is some incel ass shit. So a lot of mothers, they will raise their daughters like this. And then, obviously that doesn't work because you guys know that if you're a pretty girl and you were raised by a femcel, guess what? The whole world is nothing like your mother. So you'll go out into the public and guys will be talking to you on the street. They'll be, these girls are often very susceptible to getting into trafficking, getting into ex work at a young age, getting into these codependent relationships with men. Because a lot of these women, their mother has been going out of their way to convince them that they're not pretty, but then she's experiencing cognitive dissonance because she goes out into society and then she's like, wait a minute, everybody else is telling me I'm pretty except my mom. Everybody else is saying how beautiful I am except my own mother. Like, what's up with that? And then eventually, she is going to realize once she gets older that her mother was just a narc or that she was a femcel or she was jealous or whatever. But for a lot of these girls, these are the types that do end up being considered high risk, which is like you're more likely to get pregnant at a young age. You're more likely to maybe run away from home and stuff. And I know this because I used to work with like high risk teens. So I kind of know the psychology behind it. It's because they've been emotionally neglected. Not encouraging your child, that is a form of emotional neglect. So if there's a 13-year-old girl who has never been uplifted and then she goes to school and that's the one place where her teachers are telling her she's smart, her friends are telling her that she's pretty, she's got some boy that's telling her she's beautiful and she's so special, that is the place where she's gonna want to stay because that's where she's celebrated. Have you ever noticed the extreme hypocrisy where people say, go where you're celebrated, and then they get mad when their own daughters go no contact with them? Well, it's because you're not celebrating me. So of course I'm gonna go where I'm celebrated. So then they wonder why these little girls go out and kind of use their beauty to succeed, or they wonder where these types of women come from and how they're created. They're created by femcel mothers. And don't even get me started on the fathers as well, because I can do a whole series on that too. But in terms of her relationship to her femininity, yeah, that is what those mommy issues are. It's rooted in having that femcel mother who didn't have pretty privilege, so she didn't know how to teach you how to navigate your pretty privilege. And so that's why those girls, they end up maybe having a hard time navigating their pretty privilege, or they use different routes that they didn't have to use. So for example, getting into underage ex work or being trafficked and stuff like that. Obviously, she didn't have to use her beauty that way, but she was never taught other strategies to use her beauty to her advantage. Maybe she ended up being parented by the streets. You know what I mean? So this is another thing. A lot of kids, if you do a bad job parenting, guess what? They're going to find somebody else to be their parent. Like psychologically, they're going to find another role model. So for a lot of these women who are like femcels, basically these femcel mothers, they did a horrible job. They did a bad job at being a positive feminine role model. So guess what that little girl did? She went and found another role model. So it's like you can't get mad if Cardi B or whoever ended up being her role model. It's like, well, maybe if you or somebody in the family could have been a better role model, then maybe she would have had that. But I just find it insane how people, they blame their own little 9-year-old daughter, like, oh, well, you should have known better. Whose responsibility is it to teach that 9-year-old girl her worth? It's the parents' responsibility. It's not TikTok's responsibility. It's not their teacher's responsibility. No, it's the parents' responsibility. But number 11, signs you were raised by a femcel mother. She has a history of abuse. Maybe she was a married femcel. So, for example, maybe she was married to someone, your dad, or some other guy, and he cheated. He neglected her. He abandoned her. So when she sees you getting spoiled by a man or getting flowers and stuff, that's going to be triggering to her. Because she's like, wait a minute, how is my 13-year-old girl getting flowers? I've never received flowers a day in my life. I've been going 50-50. I've been letting him cheat. I've been letting him bring back diseases into the home, but I've never received flowers. So how is my little daughter getting flowers? Some women, they are so emotionally dysregulated to the point where they will literally get jealous of stuff like that. Like your daughter having a prom, it's prom night. A lot of femcel mothers, they will ruin your special moments. So did your mother cuss you out on prom day? Did she get mad when you became the class president? Maybe she didn't let you go to the little ceremony. Maybe she didn't show up to your high school graduation. Anything that celebrates you, anything where you get to look beautiful and be on a stage, she was never there. Or you happen to get in trouble suddenly. As soon as you won the student council president, or as soon as you got into college or something, suddenly you're in trouble and you're grounded for the next 5 years or something. Like it'll be some extreme punishment because you had something important and something really good happen to you. Okay, number 11, she calls you selfish. Femcels have a tendency to think that setting boundaries is selfish. So if you are practicing any form of self-preservation, that's selfish to her. Yet they still want to break your boundaries. She still wants to break your boundaries, but you can't break hers. She wants you to jump through all of her emotional hoops, but she's not going to jump through yours. So that's femcel behavior. She wants you to jump through all these emotional hoops to prove your love to her, but you didn't ask to be born. She is actually the one who decided to have you. She decided to birth you. So to expect to get all of your emotional needs met from a child who doesn't even know how to regulate their own emotions. By the way, children don't know how to regulate their own emotions yet because they're still children. So the fact that you've got adults who are parentifying their children, or you've got these adult women who are expecting their 13-year-old to manage their emotions, it's giving extreme femcel behavior. It's giving narc behavior. But that leads me to the next one, number 12. She is emotionally codependent on you. So it's your responsibility to jump through hoops. It's your responsibility to prove your love to her. It's your responsibility to be the house slave. So do you guys remember that video of the girl who got kicked out because she didn't cook for her brother? So a lot of women, sometimes they love their sons and hate their daughters. So that may have been a dynamic in your home. And, that's because, like I said, she's a femcel. So femcels are pick-me's who never got picked. They are very male identified. So that includes being identified by her own son. So she loves her son, or she treats her son very special. They put men on a pedestal. So that includes her son, that includes uncles, that includes grandpa, and all these other crazy guys. That includes predators. And so that's why she has no problem with these men coming in and out of the house. She has no problem, basically trying to make herself look good in their eyes. But when it comes to you, nope. Because you are a woman, this is internalized misogyny. Because you're a woman, you have no value to her. Because she knows that eventually you're going to end up getting a man of your own, and she feels like you're going to abandon her. So again, it's that wound of feeling neglected. So she feels like you're eventually going to abandon her anyway because, especially if you're pretty, she feels like life opportunities are going to come to you anyway. A man's going to come try to get with you anyway. So you're eventually going to leave her, and so you have no worth and no value to her. And obviously, this is a very narcissistic type of parent, but it is a thing. Okay, so number 13, she's a liar. Whenever you tell her that she has hurt you, whenever you say, hey, you really hurt my feelings, she gaslights you. She doesn't validate you. She doesn't care about your feelings and emotions, but she expects you to care about hers. So this is why in the exotical space, I talk about keeping the same energy. So if you don't care about my feelings, I don't care about yours. If you don't care about what I do with my life, I don't care about yours. The thing to remember, a lot of unintelligent parents, they forget that one day your children will become your parent. Okay? So one day those parents, especially if she's a narcissist and she's got mental illnesses, oh yeah, she's definitely going to be on the decline when she gets older. Sorry. But a lot of these parents who are so mean to their kids and stuff, they don't realize that one day they may be depending on their kids. Because if you're that mentally unhealthy and you're middle-aged, did you know that like mental illnesses, it actually affects your physical body? It affects like the inflammation in your body, having high cortisol levels that makes you more prone to disease and stuff like that. So a lot of these parents, they're not thinking things through because as soon as they become old, then they realize like, hey, what happened to my kids? You know, I had like 10 kids and they all ghosted me. Yeah, I wonder why. But a part of having a femcel mother is that she will never validate your feelings. And that's because pretty girls don't deserve empathy. If you're pretty, if you have any form of privilege, you're not going to get empathy from a femcel. Number 14, she feels left behind. So your beauty and the way that you're so carefree, the way that you're so ambitious, because there actually are articles that link being attractive to like being more successful and kind of having a lot of ambition. And that's because society does favor attractive people. So even though you may have a lot of problems with like black women, anytime you go outside of the unambiguous black female community, you're going to experience that pretty privilege. You know, so that's 90% of the population to where you're still receiving that pretty privilege. For those of you who are new to this channel is talking about women who are black or of black descent. But if you have a femcel mother, she feels left behind. So she feels like you left her behind in terms of your clout. You know, she feels like life is a competition and like you are her number one competition. And she's also experiencing cognitive dissonance because she's like, how could she have come out of my womb and be so different than me? How could she have come out of my womb and be so much more successful than me? Like, how is it that she looks like me, but she has pretty privilege and I didn't? So she's got all of this cognitive dissonance. She doesn't understand how you could be related to her and have all of the positive qualities that she doesn't have. Okay, so your existence is like a trigger. I talk about this all the time. Pretty women are like a walking trigger to a lot of people. You know, you're going to be a trigger to incel men. You're going to be a trigger to femcel women. You're going to be a trigger to insecure people. So there are a lot of dynamics that go into that. But number 15, she has done a lot of extreme pick-me behaviors, but she still never got picked. She has been the side chick. She's been abused. Maybe she's been super religious. Maybe she even converted to Christianity, Islam, all in an attempt to be picked and kept by a man, and it never worked. So she spent all this time, and she spent all these years hoping that one day she would meet the hypergamous man of her dreams. She's been hoping that she'd be able to keep a man by birthing you. She's been hoping that by riding and dying and going 50-50 and engaging in hypogamy, that she would finally feel happy with her relationship status, but she's not. And so that's what causes this femcel rage. But were you raised by a femcel mother? Let me know what you think in the comment section, and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.